There we go. The Iconography of an Eternal Empire. Oh dear. Okay, hold up. Let's read this real fast before we get started. I have not read this yet. Okay, let's just fly through this really... Oh my god, this artwork is so pretty, dude. Where you got, like, what I assume is supposed to be Kuei Yin, who's terrifying looking. You see the Onyx Crowman, the Moonbird over here. Fire Rain Rockets, Sky Lanterns. And then on Shen Yang's side, you've got the Terracotta Sentinel, Jade Lancers, got the Jade Warriors, the Longma, and of course Shen Yang, who's absolutely fucking huge. I like that he wears armor in dragon form. That's cool. Alright, so let's pop through this real fast. Designing a new faction doesn't just mean new miniatures and lore. There's a whole lot of other design concept work goes in the background. Each Warhammer faction has its own whole design language, its own symbols, iconography, and heraldry. What would the dwarfs be without their runes, or the high elves without their shield bosses? Much of this language is long established in the old world, but Grand Cathay was a blank slate. So in the third part of our wide-ranging round table with the old world team, let's focus on symbolism. Alongside Mark and Owen, I was one of the first people assigned to work on Grand Cathay. I was solidly focused on it, and the iconography in particular, for nearly 2 years, which is practically unheard of. The main thing we knew is that we wanted to express in our design approach is that Grand Cathay is an eternal empire. We started looking at longevity motifs from Chinese folklore and interpreting them into a more Warhammer style. For instance, we used the yin-yang motif to articulate the key Cathayan concept of harmony, which is both a battlefield mechanic and one of the guiding principles of the entire society. Unlike the real-world yin-yang, however, theirs is made up of a twin... Oh! That's super interesting. Their concept of yin-yang is made up of the twin-tailed comet. Ooh, that's very interesting. Which keys it into the entire Warhammer setting. This becomes their interpretation of a global phenomena. Means something different in Cathay, just as it does to the Lizardman, for instance. What's more, the symbols are reminiscent of the Flaming Pearl, which is another ancient Chinese motif closely linked to the folklore of female dragons. We looked at a lot of books on classical and historical design elements, including a number of in Chinese, which offer different depth of information that's just not available in English. This allowed us to familiarize ourselves with classic Chinese design concepts, look at everything from brocading to the depiction of dragons. Grand Cathay uses a lot of octagons because they're important in Chinese culture in terms of protection. 8 is an especially lucky number to the Chinese. Their regional and regimental icons are all mounted in octagons, for example. This motif allowed us to reinterpret the 8 winds of magic and their symbols in the same way. And chaos! We use elements of the Bagua from the I Ching, which is a kind of spiritual compass taken from Taoist thought. This inspired the Wuxing compass, which is ultimately how the Cathayans understand magic that suffuses their world. Very proud of the Wuxing compass, which is a great magical device situated within the celestial court Wei Jin that resonates with the elemental winds. As a concept, it takes the winds of magic, which are intrinsic to the old world setting, and puts it through a lens of a very different culture. We've given the winds names unique to Grand Cathay, different to the High Elven terms we're more familiar with, and we've associated each one with the dragons. But even though they're different, if you know the old world, you know what they mean, which is no mean feat. The winds of magic appeared in the era between the 3rd and 4th editions of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, correct, which is when I believe the setting truly began its journey towards what it is today. It's so important to the setting that we had to get it right. Which is funny because the old world breaks away from the 8 colored winds of magic, because it's going back to the magic we had before that, which is interesting. Anyway, we wanted to make a conscious acknowledgement of the spiritual and temporal realms. People of Grand Cathay are much more aware of the magic and its use in their everyday lives, which reflected the protective devices they wear. While their science and technology are thriving, they also have an immortal dragon emperor and live among floating cities. The emperor and empress are some of the most powerful sorcerers in the world, more powerful than the surviving Slann. Magic flows through Grand Cathay. Mountains float there. The world wasn't originally like that. It's the result of the shattering of the geomantic web. Interesting. Okay. It was a deliberate consideration when we started. How do we make this realm human but different? Just so it's not just empire in the east with guns and cannons. They're more understanding and accepting of the spiritual world and respectful of their emperor. We wanted to give each city its own symbol with another for each dragon's domain. These are visible in the Total War games, of course, but they were also reflected in the miniatures, which have patterns indicating their home cities. This is where the concept for the mountain armor first came in. It was originally used as the symbol of Nangao, which is the Storm Dragon's capital and a place of great industry and artifice. When we realized that this icon was also the shape of a link in this semi-mythical style of Chinese armor, we realized we had something quite special. We came up with the same idea separately. There are our own research through our own research when concepting miniatures. I was investigating how to make the armor on Sentinel stand out, and it was a happy accident when Holly and I hit on the same concept. No one's sure how real mountain armor actually was. It's associated with legendary Chinese heroes and has this distinctive 3-point linking structure. There are definitely depictions of it in folklore as well as on numerous statues, but there are no surviving examples of an actual suit of armor. This is all very true. I actually watched something about this fairly recently. Every modern attempt to reproduce it has found it to be really impractical, if not actively dangerous. All the little points seem to direct enemy swords right into it. All of the written references involve mythical figures, so it's associated in China with characters of legend. It's their version of fantasy armor, so of course we had to include it. Yes, you did, and I'm glad you did. Mountain armor was useful for that reason, also because we wanted a style of armor that wasn't chainmail, which usually appears on evil forces, or scale mail, which belongs to the high elves. Dwarfs seething at that comment. We knew we had to do something different, so Cathay ended up with a new style of layered plate. It's reminiscent of Tang Dynasty armor, but that's far from the whole picture. We're trying to observe and build without adding our own biases. Even when making main symbols, we had to ensure they didn't look like Western reproduction of Chinese design, particularly those for other IP. I will say, this is very nice to read. It's good to see that GW did their homework. Like, they really did their homework. Like, big time. This makes me feel good about if they do other factions in the future, like Koresh, the Naga of Koresh, or the Hobgoblin Khanate, or the Kingdoms of End, or like even if they do something really wild like the Centaurs in the New World and stuff like that. This makes me feel strongly that they can do it. Or Araby. God, for the love of God, give us Araby. If we're going to show Warhammer culture that can be connected to the real world, we're going to make sure those people can see themselves in it. Grand Cathay needs to appeal to our customers. It needs to look cool, but also needs to be recognizably cool to our fans in China. The most difficult thing is to make something that they haven't already got. You can't just make a copy of the Journey of the West, as there are already 20 different variants of it. Warhammer is very appealing to Chinese players because it's so different, so we can't just be copying what they already have. Hence why we're still telling stories about the old world. All the characters fit to our storyline. We're not just going to deviate from that to retell our versions of Chinese myths. We stayed away from calligraphy, even when it came to sculpting the sculpting process. There are so many languages in China, we felt we would be doing a disservice if we didn't represent them all. Holly's done a great job of designing so many different icons that carry so much meaning. Nangao also means defense, for instance. They're more like logographic sigils than words, which we then use as a shorthand. Look to the chamfer sheets for meaning. For the Sky Lantern, the symbols tell you everything you need to know about each vessel. You can show battlefield role, city of origin, and crew members just using the icons. You can also show which dragon your Sky Lantern serves. Oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. The symbol of the House of Cog and Crane tells you there are crane gunners on board, while House of Smoke and Powder lets you know there are bombs. These are different groups of artificers, which are guilds of master craftsmen in their own fields, the largest of which are based in Nangao in the direction of the Storm Dragon. There are 4 transfer sheets in total, each for one of the Jade Warriors and Gate Masters, which are full of martial iconography and ranking information, with banners for the latter and one for the Sky Lanterns. They're all great, but the one we'll sell separately later on in the year has more colors and effects that aren't possible on the smaller sheets. This one is an expansion pack to the main range. It broadens what you can offer. Good God, there's so much stuff. No, Yin Yin does not. Yeah, no, Yin Yin, from all the discussion that I got to have when I was at Warhammer World with some GW staff, Yin Yin is not relevant, at least right now, to the old world. She might become relevant later, but right now she's not. There's going to be nothing about her, at least for right now. It's just real fancy. You get all the dragon symbols as well as that of the Dragon Emperor. Most decals use single flat colors, but this sheet includes a full 3 metallic combinations. It's the first time I've ever tried it. I'm delighted with the results. It was really exciting to be able to work on a new type of dragon for Warhammer, and her dragon form Miao Ying is still sinewy and serpentine, but she and her family occupies a new stylistic register. They have a body shape that is stylistically similar to Chinese dragons, but not exactly the same. There are certain classical elements that we took liberty with. They don't have bird's feet, for instance, while the whiskers and antlers are changed, but these dragons do all have horns. Chinese dragons tend to be short-snouted, almost pug-like, but ours have long crocodilian snouts. Each one of their faces had careful thought put into the bridge of the nose and the brow. Again, it's about knowing the rules to break them. We understood that before we changed it. We spent a lot of time on gem shapes. The dragon children all have their own signature colors and gems, and there's a lot of significance to each choice. From a Western perspective, black connotates death or darkness, but it implies water in China, while white traditionally implies death, but also purity. This awareness completely changed where we went with the dragons. I got to make so many drawings of dragons, I loved every minute. Interesting. That is quite interesting. I will say, I continue to be impressed. The idea that Warhammer, the Cathayan version of Yin and Yang, came from the twin-tailed comet is fascinating to me. That is so curious, because that implies that the concept of yin and yang and the symbol of it did not become present in Grand Cathay until the birth of Sigmar. As there was, to my knowledge, unless Games Workshop is changing this, which I don't think they are, the twin-tailed comet, well, technically it's, the twin-tailed comet is supposed to not show up for the first time until it's vaguely visible 100 years before the birth of, or before the creation of the Empire. So before the foundation of the Empire, 100 years before that. And then it gets, like, really close to the world. The closest, I believe, it gets to the world is with Sigmar's birth. And then after Sigmar's birth, it continues to kind of be around and stuff, but it's mostly gone at that point. That's very interesting. I'm very curious about their arcane